Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Kat. So today I want to talk about data scientists or any relevant jobs if you are a bioinformatician or interested in using coding to help healthcare or drug development. There are so many options out there other than academia. So today I invited my friend Akash, who's working as a data scientist. He basically did his PhD in bioinformatics, and he's very interested in using his data analytics skills to address some of the questions in the drug development process and diagnostics. So I invited him on this channel to share with you about his background and his experience working on his current job, so you can have a better idea if you want to leave academia and join industry in such company, what kind of experience would it be? And would you be interested in doing such job? And I know on this channel, we have talked about other opportunities such as medical science liaison, healthcare consultants, and being a scientist in biotech. And I want to offer this opportunity to people who are out there, have not done or not interested in bench science work or business work. They still want to focus on science, but more dry lab aspects of the science, which is critical, especially during this time where genomics, proteomics, all this omics era, right? So we do need a lot of talented analysts to really help us solve this mystery of high throughput data. If you're interested in such content, please thumb up and subscribe to my channel where I share more of such interviews and share the industry landscape overview within the healthcare for people who have advanced degrees such as PhDs. So without further ado, let's invite Akash. Hi Akash, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for your time. And how's everything going?
Hi, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me. Everything's going well. We just had a little rainstorm here in Houston. So just currently trying to mitigate the rain and thunder along with the dog. So yeah, hope your day is going well though.
Yes, I just ended my day. Great, thanks for asking. So I think maybe it'll be better if we just start off by you introducing yourself to our audience so they know you better.
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Akash Mitra. I work as a bioinformatics scientist within the biopharma collaborations team at Garden Health. And I look forward to hopefully shedding some light into my current role. And I look forward to sharing some information with you all today. Hopeful that this is useful for the viewers. I will say that a lot of this information is public or it's freely available. We do have like signed NDAs, and I don't think I'll be talking very specific about like the technicalities of our products or anything. So I look forward to going through some of the questions now.
Perfect. Yeah, I know like most of our audience probably have the PhDs, but I'm sure they don't ask technical questions about this. We're more interested in why you are interested in the bioinformatics side of the biotech, and what's your background and how you join such companies and the job application process. So definitely will not go to the technical details.
Perfect.
Great. So a great segue. I'm just wondering, what's your background regarding to your PhDs, and how you actually get involved to the biotech or your company specifically, and why did you decide leaving academia?
Sure. So I obtained my graduate degree in quantitative sciences and in bioinformatics at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. During my time there, I focused a lot on what we call intratumor heterogeneity, or essentially if we've got like a giant massive tumor, how do we observe spatial differences that occur on the left side of the tumor versus the right side of the tumor? And how can that have impacts in terms of therapy resistance within the patients that we were seeing at MD Anderson? A lot of this also focused on biomarkers of response and resistance to immunotherapy and targeted therapies, which were being run in our phase 2 clinics at the time. And I think personally, I was very grateful to work in a translational lab that encouraged critical thinking as well as independent research design, and engaged alongside in co-curricular activities as well. Most of them pertain to like scientific communication, which I hope to touch on, as well as consulting with you. So I think when I was debating the switch between academia and industry, I was definitely weighing out multiple opportunities and trying to figure out what would be best for my future. At the time that I was actually making the decision, the path that I wanted to take in academia was very singular, and there was only one fellowship that I was after. Sadly, due to the pandemic, that particular fellowship was actually did not have funding, and
Oh.
it didn't have funding for 2 straight years during the pandemic. So I tried to wait for a little bit and see if that would be a useful path. But because I didn't really see a career in academia that was beyond that one particular fellowship, I decided to explore the opportunities that were within industry. And I think it's definitely important to like look at all the avenues that you've got ahead. So definitely don't always discount out academia, but keep in mind that there are several opportunities that are out there. And especially within industry, you can branch out between like biotechs or pharma or diagnostics, as well as like multiple other opportunities.
Oh, that's cool. Would you maybe elaborate a little bit more, like what specific type of, let's say, work that you've done in the PhD, and which part that you also touch upon, maybe teamwork or communication, that really contribute later on during the job hunting process?
Definitely. So I think we learn a lot of skills during our PhDs. A lot of those are like technical skills, or they're skills very, very much focused in on the research area that we're working on. But in addition to that, I am grateful that during my PhD experience, I was able to interact with a lot of like cross-functional teams, which I think has been extremely beneficial now transitioning over to industry. Oftentimes, I think within academia or within PhDs, we can't really imagine what like a cross-functional team is. But in a nutshell, I think if you're having like a molecular biologist talk to a bioinformatician, they together talk to like maybe like a pathologist or a clinician, as well as like different laboratory personnel. All of that just encompasses like this cross-functional communication, wherein everyone has like a very specific role and a very specific niche and area of expertise. And we're all trying to work together to achieve like a certain product, a certain goal, or a certain manuscript. So I think working within cross-functional teams was incredibly helpful for me. But another key point that I think I learned through my PhD was also like clear communication. This typically tends to be like one of the skill sets that we don't think of very often as we're like trying to wrap our minds around like our PhDs. But most PhDs have at least some point of time like written a piece of work, or they've presented at conferences, or they've presented at lab meetings, so on and so forth. And I think all of that builds a skill set as well that can very easily be translated over into the industry. In particular, I think like when we're discussing roles pertaining like data scientists or like bioinformaticians, what's often overlooked is this communication skill, but it's one of the primary job functions that someone has when they're working with data. I think this involves like communication into both like technical audiences, so other people within your team, as well as non-technical audiences, so people that might not be directly related to your team, but overarchingly, you guys work together on one particular project. So being able to work and wrangle with data is important, but all the analysis that you do, I think, is dependent on your ability to convey the findings that you've uncovered. And so I sincerely believe that succinct communication and like brevity is very important as a skill set, hopefully within all of industry, but definitely in particular within data science.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely resonate that communication is a key skill set you need no matter what job you want to go after outside academia. I mean, even within academia, right? If you want to be a PI, you do want to have great succinct communication skills. Just a follow-up question on I think you mentioned the translational part of your PhD work. Do you think that's necessary to later, trying to pursue a job in industry?
Sure. I think that brings up a really, really important point. I think, so while I personally worked within like a translational lab, I don't think it's 100% necessary by any means. It's definitely not mandatory, because the skill sets that we're learning through the PhD is what we hopefully want to like translate over into the industry or into whatever next position that we want. Whether you've worked with mouse data or human data, I think is immaterial. Definitely having a knowledge base of either of those, if it's relevant for the organization, is important. But I don't think that it's a strict cutoff for anyone to not have worked within a translational environment.
Got it. So it sounds more like the technical skills that you learn from PhD is more important. Am I correct?
Yeah, I would say like the technical skills that you learn are transferable across, but also like definitely like touching upon like the soft skills of like communication and organization, so on and so forth.
Got it. Yeah. Can you please share with us what's your current position and responsibilities?
Sure. So currently I work with a company called Guardant Health. And I work as a bioinformatics scientist embedded in the biopharma collaborations team. So essentially, that just feels like a very long title, but it's an external client-facing role, wherein I work with the team with increasing levels of responsibility to currently lead the data analysis across our emerging technologies, with the hopes of delivering clinically meaningful results to our pharma partners. This includes work within a matrix team to gauge unmet needs, as well as establish pathways of gap closure, as well as leveraging interactions that we have within multiple cross-functional units, including our assay teams, technological development, laboratory operations, so on and so forth. And overall, we share this combined goal of trying to develop a robust platform for our biopharma clients as we move some of our newer products across from the early access phase to the commercial phase.
Great. So like when we talk about your jobs, like now, bioinformatics, pretty abstract to me as a bench scientist. So I'm just wondering, what kind of jobs you actually do on a daily basis? Who do you talk to? Of course, don't touch about any NDA related stuff, but yeah, just overall.
Yeah, definitely. So I think for me, like a typical workday involves wearing multiple hats. And I think that's potentially like all across like industry. But definitely I could speak to my experience like within the data side of the world. So a large part of the day is allocated to either like establishing what we have known as SOPs, or essentially like different protocols, as well as like the pipelines that we have for our existing products as well as our new products. I think if I were to like roughly break this down, I would say that yes, you might be spending maybe like 60% of your time like analyzing data pertaining to, for me at least, liquid biopsy or like tissue-based assays. But also in addition to that, there's a large portion that's spent either in meetings, in communications with clients, because I work an external facing role, as well as some level, maybe like 10 to 15% of strategy that helps with the iteration or developing the new products that we have. So with the relatively ambiguous nature, I think, of this product, sorry, restart the sentence. With the relatively ambiguous nature of this role, I aim to engage in conversations directly with like subject matter experts, as well as like key opinion leaders that are externally facing within the pharma companies, as well as of course like subject matter experts within our own team or within our own company, because they're the ones that truly have all of this knowledge space. In addition to which, there's a little bit of time that's spent doing like competitive analysis. So essentially, if you've got like different products on the market, trying to find which products are more similar or more akin to Me Too's, as well as which products have like a truly differentiating factor. And then trying to leverage that so that we could build the best or the next best iteration of our own product. So that would be a rough, sorry.
Got it. No, I was trying to, understand, let's say the percentage, right? So you mentioned, let's say 60%, you're actually doing data analysis of whatever sample you acquire. And then 10, 20% you do strategy that can involve competitive analysis, right? Other products on the market. And the rest of time, another, let's say 20, 30%, you deal with external and internal stakeholders. So internal, I can understand, right? You talk with your manager and other KOLs, I don't know how you refer to them, but externally, who are actually your clients? Like, what kind of conversations are you having there?
Yeah, so externally, some of the conversations that we have typically involve like various biopharmaceuticals as well as like smaller biotechs. So typically these conversations involve either like the technical aspects of some of our products, or it could involve like a deep data analysis or a deep dive into the data that we've produced for them. So essentially, we get blood samples from our clients, and then we run them in-house. And then once we've got the data, I'd work typically alongside a medical science liaison, and together we try and draft up a deck that we present to our customers. And the customers tend to typically be translational leads for a particular compound, for a particular molecule that they're investigating within a clinical trial or within just a retrospective use. So the majority of our clients tend to be slightly higher level management, but they also involve people that work within the data science on their end of the company, as well as potentially some operations leads as well that help us in trying to have a very streamlined workflow from samples coming in from their side to everything being processed on our end, so on and so forth.
Got it. Oh, that makes sense. I do have a follow-up question since, on my channel, I actually have invited like multiple medical science liaison, and I talk a lot or a little bit about medical science liaison positions. So I'm wondering, let's say in a meeting facing clients, what's the division of labor between you as a bioinformatician and medical science liaison?
Sure. I think honestly, a lot of it is just 50-50 because we both are technical experts in our own field. The medical science liaison is typically an expert within like the disease indication, as well as potentially like the drug compound, as well as they've got a very strong knowledge base of the other clinical trials that might be running with similar compounds for their different competitors. The bioinformatics lead, on the other hand, has more of a technical knowledge base within the product itself. So in this particular instance, we're working with an assay for either liquid or like blood-based detection of cancer or through a tissue-informed approach. And so the bioinformatics person typically will go through all of the data and together with the MSL, honestly, would put together a slide deck that encompasses like the figures or the results that we've seen. The workload might be slightly more heavy for the bioinformatics person to present some of the data, but I think the interpretation of it is definitely a very much a 50-50 role because we each draw from each other's strengths.
Got it. That's actually interesting because I didn't know before that, in like companies like yours also have MSLs. I always thought it's like in pharma, biotech, have drugs in the clinical phase, and then they need a medical science liaison. But it's a great perspective.
I think it's super interesting because like traditionally MSLs have been thought of more within the biopharma space, but I think any company that interacts with biopharma would likely also need a corresponding MSL or someone within medical affairs who has that strong knowledge base of drugs as well as like disease indications. So I definitely recommend like branching out and looking into opportunities that may present themselves.
That makes sense. But this video will focus on bioinformatician and data related positions. So if I were to pursue such career, what kind of requirements you would highly recommend, which we already touched upon in the previous questions, but maybe here you can just provide a brief summary on that. So I know what to highlight, let's say on my resume if I'm interested.
Of course. Yeah. So I think within the data science position, the typical requirements generally entail experience within some form of programming language or like a scripting language. And I think while it's great to be able to speak as well as like code within like multiple languages, I think what's really essential is just having a strong knowledge base of any one language. And then I think you can totally build off of that in the future. So I would typically recommend that one scripting language, something akin to Python, is essential. And it really helps with like actually like doing deep dives into data as well as like actually wrangling data and tidying data. But in addition to that, I think there are other languages, most particularly R, which are very useful in the space of statistical knowledge, as well as like a lot of the stuff that we do within like healthcare. So R, SQL, any of these things, I think would also definitely beef up a resume and make a candidate more attractive for a data science position, at least.
This is interesting because I sorry to interrupt, it just like came into my head. I did a project actually on a software for another application for a client, and then we were trying to talk to the KOL which language this software has to have, and then I think the majority said Python, but the other half was like, we are R users, we love R, but sounds like both are very helpful.
It creates a very strong divide within the data science world.
Great. Yeah. So what other requirement, maybe other than the programming skills?
Sure. So I think we potentially just touched a little bit on communication. So I'm not going to reiterate the communication aspect, but I think the other skill that tends to be super helpful is some level of project management. And project management essentially in this context purely just reflects organizational skills. So I think we tend to have like a limited number of hours in a day. And so we definitely want to be as productive within that time frame. And then afterwards, hopefully have some level of work-life balance. So efficiently managing your time, I think, is super important. There are a lot of tools that are out there today that help you manage time. And most of them are also like free for like a single user account. So things pertaining to Asana or like Monday.com really help you in organizing your day. And I think having a very high level overview of like what are the 3 key tasks that you want to finish in one day is super helpful for productivity. The main reason I mentioned this is because I think number one, we definitely want to get our projects completed. But number two, within industry, sometimes we're judged we have performance reviews based off of the metrics that we hit. And so in this particular instance, I think having like a documented log really helps you, number one, to hit those goals. And then number two, when you do have like your one-on-one with your manager, you can go back and reference this to talk about like the different things that you've accomplished, and hopefully use that to leverage your true worth to the company as well.
Yeah, I think definitely project management is important again for all the jobs. Like I think consulting we call it 80-20, right? There's always a lot of jobs to do, but you have to prioritize that 20%, which can impact the 80% of your total work. Great aspect of it. And I think, maybe we can move on to the application process. So when you start thinking about maybe branching out and look for jobs out there, what is the process looking like? And maybe, yeah, can you share that with us?
Yeah, so I think the application process for data science tends to be quite vast and varied. It really depends on the path that you want to follow. So you could definitely look for a data science job within the consulting world. And a lot of the consulting companies now have like very separate data science and like AI wings within their institutions. But I think for this purpose, I'll restrict it to like biotech or pharma for now, and diagnostics. So I think the key differentiator when we're looking within a data science position is that most employers look for some level of coding competency. And this is conducted through multiple different platforms. So I think at least when I was going through my rounds of interviews, every company had like a different software that they were trying to use. The ones that tend to be most frequently used are things like HackerRank, which essentially lets an interviewer look into the particular screen that you're working on. And yes, I know that can sound a little scary at times, but honestly, I think most people understand that while thinking on your feet is definitely a great skill to have, it can be sometimes difficult to code on your feet if you don't know like what the assignment is beforehand. So I just say that definitely helps to practice. And there are a couple of resources that I'd be happy to like direct y'all to if you want to practice some of the coding challenges. But I think it's important to note that that's just one aspect of it. And I don't think that most applicants would be completely rejected, even if they can't solve like one particular part of a coding challenge. So I would say that's the key differentiator. Along with that, the application process tends to be pretty similar to most other industry positions. So you typically have like one round of HR beyond which you can have like this coding competency. Typically after that, you might be talking to a hiring manager. So I think there is that one extra additional step here. Once you complete the call with a hiring manager, you might be asked to present to like a larger team, which might be the direct team that you're going to be working with or other cross-functional leads within the organization. And then you typically have like a whole bunch of different one-on-ones after that. I think the record for the most one-on-ones I've had tends to be about, I think, between 12 to 14 one-on-ones, which was very hectic. But I think it's also, there are pros and cons. It really helps you to understand the company better and get a good idea of the work culture. But I do think that if you are being scheduled for more meetings than you would like, it's important to point that out to whoever is assisting you with the recruitment process, because we don't want to be wasting anyone's time at the end of the day.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. And how long is each one-on-one?
Typically one-on-ones are like, just like 30 minutes, but it's not all that terrible, but I think they can add up when you continuously do like the same spiel for like 12 times over. So yeah. For sure.
And typically lasts like a few days, I would imagine, or it's just like the whole day for like 6 hours straight.
Yeah. So I think it just depends on like your particular work schedule. Most companies, I think, are quite flexible and they try to accommodate whatever schedule you have, which if it so works out that it's better, then a candidate can go through like the entire process within a day. But I personally think it's slightly easier to like stagger the process. And if it does help for you to be fresh when you're going through these interviews, then I would recommend potentially staggering it. But it's solely based on personal preference.
Yeah, so just a follow-up. So it's not like multiple rounds. So it's as long as you pass like the first HR call and somebody else, and you just have all of these conversation like scheduled together.
Yeah, so I think once you've cleared what would likely be the first 3 rounds, so like HR, technical, and then hiring manager, then I think you get scheduled for your group presentation as well as all of your one-on-ones. So
Okay,
typically after, in most instances, after 3 calls.
got it, got it. So, we need to prepare for these interviews, right? So what would be your advice, what kind of best resources that you leverage? I think you mentioned a couple websites before, which I'm not familiar with, but if you can share a little bit there with any in the audience who are interested in this role.
Sure. So I think whether we're looking at a data science role or just any role within industry, it's definitely good to do your background research and look at multiple resources that might be available to help you, to help guide you through the interview process. So for general purpose roles, I think just looking at Glassdoor or Glassdoor's subsidiary Fishbowl really helps.
Oh, I didn't know Fishbowl.
Yes,
I know Glassdoor.
I highly recommend Fishbowl. Sadly, I'm not sponsored by them, but I recommend.
We'll get you that sponsorship.
Thank you, thank you. I recommend looking into it because I think it's a network where you can chat with people at various companies. And because of the nature that it's slightly anonymized, you're not actually like revealing too much personal information. So people tend to be more helpful, I think, specifically when they're either talking about like interview questions, the work culture, as well as just general compensation and how that looks at different companies. In addition to that, I think the other resources when you're specifically within the data science role include stuff pertaining to LeetCode or DataCamp. Both of these are, I think, they're well known within like the tech sphere, but they might not always be well known within like the biotech or the healthcare sphere. But I think it's super useful because there are a lot of questions over there that can help you prep for these interviews, as well as going over like algorithms. And I think just having like a fresh idea of like different algorithms, whether it comes to like searching or sorting, are traditionally things that we think of that are more tech oriented, but they're starting to be asked, I think, in at least like the biotech or the pharma interviews. So it's useful to go over like cheat sheets from either of those websites.
These are great resources. Oh, sorry. If you.
And Catherine will post a link down below.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much, Akash. I do have a follow-up question on the Fishbowl. So you mentioned they're anonymized. Are they currently working that company, or they're previous, like their former employees?
Yeah. So I think so within Fishbowl, you've got different communities. The community that you're a part of is based on your current company. I'm sure people can talk about like previous or past employers, but typically, I think the most valid or verified information that you get is from the company that they're currently working for, because it's also just much more timely. I can speak at least that there is some level of verification because they do ask you to use your work email to actually verify the account. But beyond that, I think it's completely anonymized. So it's absolutely a free platform to talk about multiple things and ask questions that we might really want answers to.
Yeah, this is really great resource. I will have to check it out as well. Great. I know it's been a relatively long interview already, so I'm just wondering, do you have any last tips for any applicants out there?
Yeah, I think honestly, like data science is a very nebulous term, and it can encompass everything and nothing at the same time. So I would say you don't always have to have like a computational background. I think having a computational background is definitely very helpful, but there are a lot of people that transition into these roles and learn a lot while they're on the job. So I think don't always count yourself out if you don't have like the strongest coding skills or the strongest programming skills. I think you can totally make up for it through other departments. So definitely explore the avenues. And I think there are clearly opportunities across like biotech as well as pharma. and multiple other companies that are currently hiring for data science. My last parting thought, I think, is definitely just know your worth. So don't always settle for the first offer. Talk to different people to get a better idea of like what market value is for the position. And again, like I think Fishbowl, Glassdoor also do account for what compensation looks like. But there are definitely other websites as well that you can leverage specifically within the tech world. There's a website called levels.fyi. Again, sadly not sponsored, that encompasses like all of total compensation, whether it's like base salary plus RSUs, which are like restricted stock units or ownership or equity of a company. They encompass all of that information. And again, that's a very secure database. So I definitely recommend checking out levels.fyi. The other potential resource, which some people might overlook, is h1bdata.info. Essentially, for all labor certification attestations, they have to upload that information somewhere. And so essentially, you've got websites that dig through that data and scrap it out, or sorry, that dig through the data and scrape it out. And from there, I think you can also look at what base salary looks like for the particular market or for the particular company that you're interviewing for.
Is that actually accurate, the H1B database? I forgot the name for that.
Yeah, so the database pulls directly from Department of Labor. So it has to be, it's as accurate as the company is willing to provide. So because it's a government interaction, I think it's pretty accurate.
Cool, good to know. And I think, many of the followers on my channel actually are international students. So this is great for them to check both, learn about H1B and the salary of the job.
Yeah.
So this is great. Thank you so much, Akash. We definitely learned a lot about data scientist positions as well, bioinformatics in general. I didn't know, you wear multiple hats. It's really interesting, not only just the technical aspect of it, you also interact with clients, you also interact with internal leaders, as well as strategy part of it. So it's, you can basically go anywhere after this. So it's great. Well, thank you again, and hopefully we can connect again soon.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope you and your followers have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions, leave it below. And if you like such content, please subscribe to my channel where I share more tips and experiences from people who work in different industries with the PhD backgrounds. Hopefully you enjoy this video, and I will see you in the next one.